Well, once upon a time, a few years ago, Blythe Evans, who was winning a lot of races at the time, beat Mario Cipollini in a sprint in the Giro d'Italia, said at the time that it was now easy to beat Cipollini. He's had to eat those words every year since. We haven't seen him in a lot of races, and he most certainly hasn't won any for a while. See if he can regain some form in this Volta a España.
Hitting the line now, Index Alexia, and not a very good time for them. Pavel Sabadelli's team, 28.59 for 6th place at the moment. Blythe Evans, Bobby Murray Cole, is one of the few riders in the world who's actually finished the Tour de France and was then disqualified for that fight with Bobby Julich. At the Kelme team here now, the face there of Oscar Sevilla. And this Sevilla says he's actually starting this race 7 kilos lighter. That's about 17 pounds lighter than the time he abandoned in this year's Tour de France. So that could mean trouble for a number of the other riders in this year's race if he's carrying some 7 kilos less up the mountains to come in this year's Vuelta a España. We'll take another short break. We're starting to get down now to the cream of the top teams making their start. And as the teams continue to arrive, this is now Seiko, who were right up amongst the leaders at the halfway check with 14 minutes and 12 seconds. Cipollini's squad's just gone through there at best time of 14.03. But now, can Seiko do anything about that time of Milanese? I'm not too sure they can. They're not going to be far adrift from it, though. So this has been a good start for Gilberto Simoni, but there won't be a golden fleece waiting for him at the end of today's stage. So Seiko come up towards the line, slipping now into 3rd place, arriving the time of Big Matt, and they're going to beat Big Matt as they come up to the line, but only just 27 and 34 seconds for them.
Well, that's a good form, a good ride, I think, for Gilberto Simoni. He'll be very happy with that. He's starting well up at the top end of the overall classification, but he'll take a back seat over the next few days until we get to the big mountains. This is a team that has a Spanish leader, Manuel Garate, but also they've got 2 leaders, so they've got a 2-pronged attack here, because Pavel Tonkov, strangely enough, is the last listed rider in this team. And a man, I think, once again, one of the many riders who announced their retirement, but he seems to have come back to some sort of form, Bob.
He did really good Giro d'Italia this year, winning the hardest stage at the top of the Passo Coe, and it's a very mountainous Volta a España. Gives him a good race, good format for him to get some final results before the season is over. He's had a great career as a stage racer in particular, and I'm sure he loves the profile of this Volta a España. And let's see how well the Lamprey team can do in this very important team
time trial. It's very difficult, though, to hold the form for 2 Grand Tours in a year like this, but the Kelme team have had to do that very many times over the past. And there is Miguel Indurain on the right-hand side, and I don't think he's been riding his bike too much, but still keeping himself involved with the sport of professional cycling. But I tell you one thing, when Miguel was racing, he was such a cool man when it came to the Tour de France. He was always on form and always enjoyed the individual time trials.
Well, as we look here at the Kelme Costa Blanca team, good news is the team survives after all the money problems it's had this year and will continue in the sport, and that is good news. But to pay and keep their superstars, they've reduced their team in size now, and so a few of the riders will be released, but the team will continue to be, I'm sure, a major factor in the world's major tours next year. So too will this team at Lamprey Dakin, and as Paul has said, they've got Tonkov here, probably as the recognised team leader, but I think Juan Manuel Garate, who rode so well in the Giro d'Italia this year as well, is looking for the chance to jump into a high position. And for the sprints, of course, the return of Jan Zverada, who is not quite the man he used to be, but is still sprinting. And this is now the arrival of Domo Farm Frites at 12.5 kilometres. Acqua Saponi, the team of Cipollini, still best time. This is not going to alter the fact here either, as they come through now just off the leaderboard in 4th place with 14 minutes and 9 seconds.
Kelme here, in fact, are looking like a very well-drilled squad there as we look at Oscar Sevilla and Santiago Botero looking to try and get themselves at the top end of the leaderboard. And over the last 5 team time trials we've had at the Vuelta a España, it has really been very much a Spanish affair. Going back to 1989, it was the very famous Beache team who won there. In 89, it was Caja Rural. Then it was Lotus, which was also the Festina team, because they raced as Lotus in Spain and Festina in the rest of Europe. In 1991, it was Once got themselves the win. And then in 1992, the last time we had a team time trial at the Vuelta a España, it was the Gatorade team of Gianni Bugno. But I have to say, Bob, looking at Kelme here, they really do give an impression of very high speed.
Well, the Kelme team knows that they have to do a good time in this team time trial for Oscar Sevilla not to be too far behind, probably the more stronger Once team in the team time.
The teams heading up the leaderboard at halfway have slowed a little bit, and the slow ones have gone quicker so far. Now, as far as we know, there is no wind blowing today. Officially there isn't, but of course once you're riding in formation, you do feel that wind. There's the situation at the finishing line at the moment. Phonak pushed back by 4 seconds now by that very fine ride by Aqua Saponi. Now, the US Postal Service team, Roberto Heras, a first and a third in the history books already in the Tour of Spain for him. But I think, and Paul Showing thinks like me, this is the man to beat in this year's Tour.
Well, they've got a great 1-2 in the squad as well, because don't forget, Jose Luis Ribiera is riding superbly towards the end of the season. There was Kierkegaard, who's re-signed with US Postal for next year, and Tony Cruz is in there as well. This is a team like Team Once, which invests an awful lot of time and money during the season to prepare for team time trials, and that may well pay today. But for them, they're going to have to do something very special if they're going to beat the next team to start, which will be the yellow-clad team of Team Once.
So US Postal making the way out onto the course now. 24.5 kilometres it is. And they're looking for a good time here. I don't think they're worried too much if it's not the best time, but they want to rival the time of the Kelme team because they have challenges long-term in this year's Tour de France. The Tour of Spain, rather. We spent too much time on the roads this year. So the team... Now, as we come up to the line, 27.45. So it's still Mario Cipollini who will be crowned race leader if we go down to them as the winning team.
Well, that is not going to be for too long, and I would say in about 26 minutes' time we will see this team post the fastest time. Team Once, the winners of the team time trial of the Tour de France this year, and a team who back in 1990 also took the team time trial at the Vuelta a España. Now you see how they're riding off nice and slowly. That is a very sensible start, because very often riders tend to get a little bit too excited, don't they, Bob, in the first kilometre. If you start too quickly, it really blows the engine out of a lot of the other riders, the lesser riders on the team, and you need a full 9 men.
Absolutely, and when you see this first corner is very close to the start line, if you're the last man in position, you have to sprint twice as hard as the guys in the front to keep on equal terms with them. It's one of the most beautiful images in all of cycling. The uniforms, all the same, of a team time trial. It's one of the most painful as well, because each rider knows that they have to be able to pedal as fast as the strongest guy on the team. That's a daunting prospect. But Once, they know, like you said, Paul, they need all 9 guys to contribute, and that's why they've won a number of team time trials over the years.
It's formidable team, this one, Bob, with Pedera in their road so well in the Tours, a young rider, Yatsk, who's bang on form, Rushka, a good time trial rider, Acevedo in the mountain. This team is a team to be feared this year, there's no doubt about it. And Bolocchi, well, Saez, the manager, is hoping that he can steer this man to his first big stage race win. He's come so close in the Tour de France, but he's never won. One man's got in his way called Lance Armstrong, who isn't here, of course, in this year's Vuelta a España. Now, Lampre have gone through, as we swing back to the midway point now. Lampre have gone through, and this should be Team Telecom, and it is, with the second best time and one of only 2 teams to get inside 14 minutes. And it looks like we're now going to watch the third team to break the 14-minute barrier. So there's good news for Eric Zabel. Paul, he's ahead of Cipollini's team, 13.37.
Well, over the first 4 days out on the open road, Eric Zabel would have a very good chance of getting himself the leader's jersey in this bike race, because I think Zabel is on form and a man we also need to think about for a World Championship jersey in about 2 weeks' time after the end of the Vuelta a España. There at the back is Roberto Heras, you can see wearing 221, the team leader of US Postal Service, using an incredibly small gear, obviously trying to emulate the team leader Lance Armstrong. But the rest of the team getting themselves into that aerodynamic position, each one taking turns. There's Jose Luis Ribiera. Ribiera riding very well after the Tour de France and leading up now to the Vuelta a España.
Well, they're all looking pretty cool in their Nike Space Age suits at the moment, as they now really put the pressure on Matthew White. They're finally getting a big tour here off the US Postal team.
And here's their time. It's not too bad. They had a pretty good intermediate time. It looks like they're going to be in 4th place, just 16 seconds down on the Aqua Saponi team.
So 27.20 then from Domo. 4th slot for them at 54 kilometres an hour. Now we're going to the 4th last team to go, team number 20, Fassa Bortolo. And this is a team which carries Francesco Casagrande. He's been a little bit in the quiet section of the racing this year, but people are listing him amongst the possible winner of this tour. And if you're worried about where the sprinters department is, well, look no farther than Alessandro Patacchi, who is on form and has shown Eric Zabel a clean pair of wheels in the recent Tour of Holland. So Zabel is a little bit worried about the whereabouts of Patacchi. At least he will be tomorrow, and not so much so today. Telecom still heading towards the finish. A possible best time for them or Kelme when they get there, as Fassa Bortolo, they start their run around the 24.5 kilometre course. So we then will have only 3 teams left.
That time in the mountains, which is very hard to do, but I think that at the end of the day, Sevilla will be very pleased with that time that Kelme did.
Well, it could give him a gold jersey by the end of the day. We'll see. I'm not sure who finished the line in first place there. As we look now at the Mappe team, now this team, as I say, shrouded in a little bit of mystery, because as Mappe start, they're starting without Eddie Ratti, who has passed all of the UCI tests, but the team has pulled him out of the squad. 8 riders only starting because they signed him in, and now they've signed him out.
Well, the rules are if the rider is signed in the night before the race, you cannot be replaced after the 5 o'clock signing in time. So there's no chance they had of replacing him overnight. In the past, we have seen our fellow commentator Bob Roll replaced at the start of the Tour de France. But on that occasion, the stage that Bob crashed in wasn't an actual official stage of the Tour. So Nathan Dahlberg came in. Ratti's name is still up on the graphic there, but he has not been allowed to start, pulled out by his team, and that is a story that we shall follow over the next few days. As
a few people, I think. US Postal conceding 11 seconds to their stars today at the moment as they go through in 13:46.
Well, there are just 2 teams left to start on the starting gate now. iBernesto.com and Team Coast, the team of last year's winner, Angel Luis Casero. And it'll be interesting to see just how he performs over the 3 weeks of the Vuelta a España. You get a chance here just to see that is Matty White there. This skin suit these riders are wearing, by the way, has been specifically designed to improve the aerodynamics. As we look at the intermediary point, Kelme with the fastest time, Team Telecom second, US Postal Service in 3rd place.
Well, it couldn't be a better day out on the course. I think the times at the finishing line are confirming that. They're all coming home in excess of 52 kilometres.
You might not give it absolutely everything, but when the team depends on it, as iBernesto.com do here, on every member of the team, it really puts a lot of pressure on the body first day.
Every team rider does not want his leader to start at the deficit of a Grand Tour. They lost 39 seconds there to Kelme. Tonkov already 40 seconds behind Oscar Sevilla. That's something that you don't want to happen. That's why you see the team break apart so fast. 5 guys only finished with the Lamprey squad. So we get ready to watch the Benesso team start. They also need to do a great team time trial so that their rider Juan Miguel Mercado has a good chance to stay near Sevilla before we get to the mountains.
Well, Mercado had a wonderful tour last year, best of the squad. He finished in 5th place, and it was a great performance. He was nearly 6 minutes in the end off the race winner, Casero. But he's a year older now, and he is very definitely no longer a secret weapon for iBernesto.com. So they want a good time for him today. We're expecting Telecom to come in next, and it could be close to the leaderboard. They've been riding pretty coolly out there. They were only conceding a few seconds, 2 seconds, less than 2 seconds, to the race leaders Kelme, who are in with the best time, and sending a few shockwaves, I think, down the row here, because we could see a Kelme rider in the gold jersey as leader by the end of this day. But still to start, the last team with Angel Casero, the winner last year, who hasn't done much racing at all this year, and he'll be in the final squad to go in Team Coast. Very quickly into formation here, iBernesto.com, and they're a pretty solid team in the team time trial. Not quite as solid as this squad though. Once, who should be coming up now to the check, and just look at this. Kelme in 13:35, and Once, any combination of their camp, put them together in a team time trial formation, and this is the result. They're going to come through here with the best time. It's going to be close though, I'm not too sure, Paul. With about 10 seconds to go, it could well be just the best time as we pull back and reveal the line. I hope for their sake. 13:32, Bob.
Somebody in the back has got a problem, Bob. Somebody, in fact, has just gone off the back of the group there, and I think that may well be a goodbye for him, because they will not wait in the second part of this course for anybody who has a physical problem, and that was definitely a physical problem there as we look at Yoshiba Bolocki just sitting at the back of the group here. That, in fact, goes to show just how good a performance Team Kelme have actually put in so far, only being beaten by the Onse squad by a mere 2 seconds as we go back to the finishing line, and Team Telecom looking to try and be the next best time in.
Well, have they continued good progress, because they were 2 seconds only behind Kelme at the halfway point, and teams have tended to pick up speed over the closing kilometres. There's the time of Kelme. It's going to be very, very close. We are still talking perhaps 2 seconds, a question of which way. Big Ralph Aldag there doing his most best for Eric Zabel. I would expect to see Zabel try and take the lead across the line and think perhaps of a golden jersey for a day or so. But as they come up to the line now, it is just slipped away, so it won't really matter. 26.39, the 3 second Mardo.com now.
Well, Ibernesto.com is still looking very well drilled. I think Onse will have built on that advantage that they had at the halfway stage, because this is a very experienced team. They're looking a bit ragged right now, but that explains just why they have put in the fastest time, because this is, as Bob said, an excruciating discipline of the sport, a very difficult one when your legs are almost bursting for the full length of this 24.5 kilometre time trial test for the whole of the team here of Onse. The next team to come up to the finishing line will be the team of Roberto Heras, US Postal Service. But as we go back out here, we get a chance to see who is putting in another good time here at half distance. And this is going to be Mape Quickstep, and they are riding, let's not forget, with 8 riders after the withdrawal before the start of Eddie Ratti. He was pulled out by the...
They've gone through as we now swing to the finishing line here for the arrival of US Postal. Very close to Cofidis time by a single second at halfway. Cofidis are in with the 3rd best time as they now continue to come up to line. Remember, they want Heras over in first place. If they can get in there, it won't be a jersey, I don't think, because Kelme are going to take that, but it's going to be desperately close. In fact, this might be it on the line. 26.35. They've done it by a second. What a reversal.
Unbelievable. This is why you have to invest a lot of time into the discipline of team time trialing. They improved over the second half. They went in just inside of Kelme there by just a mere second, and I have to say Johan Brunel will be absolutely enthralled with that permission there. And I think, Bob, it looked as if it was Tony Cruz who went across the line in first place there.
American Tony Cruz, a very fast sprinter, went across the line first. Now he is leader of the Tour of Spain on the road right now, but Onse is still to finish, and they are flying down.
Riders, it is Serrano who's having difficulty hanging on to the back here. Just wishing the end of this time trial as fast as possible, because it looks as though he's just about on his limit right now.
Well, in fact, he did very well to stay in contact, just going through that succession of curves just a few moments ago. There you can see the time to beat of US Postal Service, 26 minutes 35 seconds, as Onse now go inside the final kilometre. It's going to be very close, but they should in fact be able to do it, because their time there was just 25.10, and at this speed they should cover the last kilometre in a time of 1:05. That would put them 5 seconds faster than US Postal on the line, if my calculations are correct.
All right, well, sorry about the picture break up there. That's because of those nasty looking trees on our picture, but we're back out in the open space now as we watch Ibernesto briefly, because we've gone back to the finish to see the arrival now of the Onse team as they course across the centre of the city of Valencia. Now there's the time of US Postal, 26.35, and there's no way now that Onse isn't going to reach that and better it, because they've got plenty of time in hand here as they now sprint up towards the line. Remember, this really is the team to beat throughout this Vuelta a España. They've got some good names on it this year, many of them having had the experience of the Tour de France and now have come here with a vengeance in the Tour of Spain. So Onse pushing up against US Postal. They're going to better it, and they're going to give us a new leader in the Tour by the end of this day, I think, or the first leader even, as they come up to the line. Onse are best time 26.21, 14 seconds quicker than US Postal. So as they go top of the leaderboard. There are now only 4 teams to come to the finishing line before we see who is the first leader of this year. This team has not had a great season. Many people said the team should have made the Tour de France. They didn't. And Alex Zula was going to ride for him, a former winner of the Tour of Spain. He's decided not to start. He is going to concentrate on preparing for the upcoming World Championships, where I would suspect he'll go more for the time trial than the road race, because that's a discipline he is very, very good at. There is the situation at the finish, with the best time not to be beaten now done by Once. US Postal have again left an early mark on a Tour of Spain with a fine second place, and that will put right up amongst the leaders Antonio Cruz's best of the US Postal, because he was first across the line. 3 kilometers to go, Bob.
Let's not forget Antonio Cruz, a very fast sprinter. We might see him indeed get into the gold leader's jersey of the Tour of Spain as the time bonuses for the flat stages come into play.
Well, we've listed about 18 good sprinters in this race, so tomorrow I'm passing all of the final kilometre over to Bob Roll, because there's going to be so many riders fighting out for the bonuses with the chance of a golden jersey for a few days. Not just Mario Cipollini and Eric Zabel. We've got Jerome Blylavens, Jans Verada, we've got Jeremy Hunt, Smetanine. There are so many of them. Pataki, you can go on. And I think we're going to see a terrific finish to the first stage of the Tour tomorrow. And live coverage, remember, it will continue on OLN now for the next 3 weeks, and I hope you'll enjoy following the fortunes of the riders. Tour champion Angel Casero, he wears number 1. He's right at the front at the moment. Isn't going to pull off a golden jersey on day 1 for sure, but he won't worry too much, because he took it on day 23, I think it was, last year, when he finally won the race in the time trial. So they crossed the line, only 8th best, 27 minutes dead for them. So the winners will be Once with 26.21. In second place, US Postal, 26 minutes and 35. And third place, little bit of a surprise, will be Kelme, 26 minutes and 36 seconds. So the team time trial is over, but our coverage certainly isn't. So stay around with us as we'll get lined up now for the presentations, and we'll just take a short break as you look now at the result of stage 1 of this year's
Hauler.
Back to the podium then. Here they are, Paul, and the men in yellow, a familiar position at the end of a team time trial for Once, and for Joshiba Bolocki, life can only get better.
Well, it can only get better. All has been worked out completely to script so far, but let's not forget last year Joshiba Bolocki just blew apart in the mountains. It is so difficult to ride for 2 Grand Tours and stay at the top form for such a long period of time. The team set him up perfectly, and I would think he'll be very happy at getting the first Mayo Amarillo. There he is. He looks ecstatic at the fact that the team has won, and the team, I would have to say, Bob, put in a superb performance. As soon as we saw them out on the course, they looked as if they were fast.
Yes, they were going right from the start, right into line, and they did a great job. One thing you see in team time trials is the teams that have a GC contender somehow are able to put the most effort into the team time trial and come out at the top. Postal, second place. Kelme in third place. All of those teams having a GC contender. Postal, obviously, Roberto Heras, and Kelme, our man, Oscar Sevilla. So it's going to be a great Volta a España this year. But Team Once, the team of the day, giving it over to Joshiba Bolocki. He came across the line first, and I think we'll see him get the first leader's jersey of this Volta a España, the golden fleece.
There he is, and in fact he wore it for 3 days last year in the Vuelta a España. The riders say goodbye to Valencia, the first big day of road racing after that record-breaking average speed for a team time trial in a Grand Tour yesterday. And the big loser indeed was Gilberto Simoni, because his Seiko team conceded 1 minute and 15 seconds to the race-winning Once squad. And that's a lot, Paul.
It's an awful lot of time to lose, but Gilberto Simoni actually said afterwards that he felt that the team had finished roughly where he expected them to do. But I think he will climb a lot closer towards the top of the overall standings when this race gets up to Madrid. I do think, though, that it is going to be a Spanish battle, and we always expected that to be so. And once again, Team Once came out and proved that they were one of the top teams in the world at the discipline of team time trialing. They also put a lot of pressure onto the shoulders of the team, because Joshiba Bolocki, you can see right in the middle there, already taking the yellow jersey on the very first day. But another team who rode very well is not necessarily a Spanish team, but got some very strong Spanish speakers in there, US Postal Service. And Roberto Heras' team just losing 14 seconds Phil, I think they'll be exceptionally happy with that, because Heras wants to keep as close as possible as he can to the Once squad, and they did that yesterday.
Right, now, Bob Roll, it's not really a sprinter stage today. There's quite a big climb in the middle of the course.
There's a Category 1 climb towards the start of the race. Also a Category 3 time as they get Category 3 climb as they get closer to the finish. But I don't think that the course is hard enough to break up this race, because we have three very strong teams totally dedicated to the chances of their sprinter. Team Telecom for Eric Zabel, Mape for Oscar Friere, and Aqua Saponi for Mar-E-O, Super Mario Speedwagon Cipollini. I think we're going to see a clash of the titans as the sprinters get to the line together. Big field sprint today. We'll see which one came out on top. Yesterday it was the Argonauts of Once that delivered the golden fleece to Yosheva Boloki. Today I think we'll see the big man of the peloton, the linebackers, the sprinters come to the fore.
All right. Well, with no bonuses on the Tour of Spain, as was the case last year, of course, you have to earn every second on the race route. Just take us through briefly the race route today, Paul.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Phil. I think the thing that's really going to dominate the race today is the temperature, because it's up around 35 degrees centigrade, 95 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a 144-kilometre ride, just slightly away from the Mediterranean, and they go through the finishing town of Alcoy with 27 kilometres to go, and there's rather a tough climb on that circuit.
And we're now looking at live pictures on an absolute scorching day in Spain. The temperature set to soar well into the mid-90s Fahrenheit today. In fact, because of the heat, the judges have allowed drinks to be distributed right from the start today. And two riders not waiting behind for anybody after 10 kilometres have attacked, and they're now leading by a little over 9 minutes. In fact, the gap is coming down. They once had 11. And the name's Germán Nieto of the Relax Fuenlabrada team. You might remember the man that shaves his head dressed in red from last year's Tour. In the end, he finished second from the end in the overall classification, but was very much in our pictures. There he is now, setting the pace, and the man with him, riding, for as far as I can work out, Paul, is first Vuelta, Médéric Klein of the Cofidis team.
Well, they've gone out very early on, and there's been no reaction at all in the main field, and I actually think that a move like this is really going to be good for the sprinters, because there is a very tough climb halfway through the course today at just 77 kilometres of racing covered, and I think because there's a breakaway off the front like this, then the sprinters will get a chance to accompany the majority of the climbers over that ascent, and we will see a sprint royale towards the finish.
All right, well, there are two leaders. As I say, the last time check was at 56 kilometres. 9 minutes 22 was the gap then. Let's just have a look what the team time trial did for the overall classification. Not surprisingly, all of these riders on the Once team, because they won the team time trial yesterday. Boloki was first over the line. He's got the golden jersey. All riders on equal time. A little bit further down, and it's all the members of the US Postal team who come in at number 8. They're 14 seconds back. And looking further down, once we see the end of the US Postal, they make the top 15 riders overall. And yesterday, the one Once rider not finishing with the team was indeed Jan Ruska, and so he's dropped into the middle of the overall lead in that competition. There's the latest time check, 9:22. It's hovering around the 10-minute mark, starting to move up again, it appears, as they now go what is a beautiful part of Alicante region of Spain here. We're on the eastern side, remember, and only a couple of days away from a pretty sharp climb up over the Sierra Nevada. But today, Bob, we're not very far away now from the Alto de Portillo.
Well, the riders in the breakaway now are on the lower slopes of the Category 1 climb. It'll give us a good chance to look at this climb, see what the sprinters are going to face later on. There's a good graphic of it. Cabeza de la Carrera, that's the head of the bike race, and that's our two breakaway companions around 9 minutes ahead. We'll get a chance to see this whole climb as these guys go up it, see what the sprinters are going to face.
Well, this is a 5 miles climb, which will take the riders up to 2,500 feet.
Well, the first part of the climb is actually a fairly steady climb. It averages out around about 11%. There's a slight decline halfway up, which gives the riders a bit of respite, and then it kicks up again, and it's really quite difficult towards the summit. It peaks out at 770 metres. But very often, Bob, it's the case, isn't it, with the Spanish climbs? They're never really quite as steep as the Tour de France climbs, but they do go on for an awful long time.
That is a tradition in Spanish climbing, and this way they've built the roads on here, and the shape of the mountains as well. They're a lot more gradual, but quite a bit longer. You can see now that there's no shade at all for these two riders in the breakaway. It'll be quite hot on this climb for the peloton.
Actually, it looks quite a tough climb here at the start. As we see, Klein is a third-year professional, this man for Cofidis. He joined the team last year. He's never won a race, but he's certainly featuring well today. The pair getting together right out at the start. A lot of the riders, including Oscar Freire, has said that they didn't think this was necessarily a stage for the sprinters. But the way it's going, Bob, 2 riders being the carrots, I think it possibly will run out that way now.
Well, there won't be a chase or a lot of attacking in the peloton probably, but this looks like quite a really hard climb for these 2 riders, and the peloton will be facing the same thing. But it probably regroup on the run into the finish town. It's still a ways out from the finish, about the halfway point of the race course. So I think it will come back together. We'll have to see how hard the next climb is, which is only measured as a Category 3, but you never know. This is going to catch, I think, the peloton by a little bit of a surprise.
Well, it's 77 kilometres covered when the riders get to the top of this climb, and these 2 guys, having attacked after just 11 kilometres of racing, now really are starting to feel the pain in their legs. The man who's doing the best job there on the front is Médéric Klein, the Cofidis rider, and I think by the fact that, in fact, Nieto has taken all of the hotspot sprints out on the course so far today, I think we will see the young Frenchman going over the top of this climb in first place. And there is the main field now, and although I don't think they will attack on this climb, there's an awful angry pace starting to appear, because you can see as they go back over each other there, you can see the cars underneath there, and I do think that they will pick the pace up until they get to the bottom of this climb, because they will know exactly how difficult it is at the bottom part of the climb, and that's when you can always have accidents. And I'm sure we'll see the yellow jerseys of Yoshiba Belocchi's Once team coming to the front, and watch out for this man, because not too far away from the red guard on the front there will be Gilberto Simoni, who has said quite consistently this morning that he wants to win this Vuelta a España, and he's still smarting a little bit because of the problem that he had during the Giro d'Italia earlier this year. Now there's an incident at the back here. This looks like Javier Jean, the rider from the Big Matt Aubert team. And in fact, Nieto having problems in the leading group of
miles, and already they've sliced into that lead of the 2 men up front, and they've brought it down to just on 8 minutes at the start of the climb.
Right in the middle there, Yoshiba Belocchi with a teammate up alongside him to pace him at the front end of the main field. And the pink jersey there just on his shoulder, in fact, was Eric Zabel, who was looking for to open up his account here at the Vuelta a España. These climbs in Spain are very difficult at this time of the year, because let's not forget, men like Eric Zabel have been racing since almost the month of January. These are the 2 leaders right now. At one stage they had an advantage of 11 minutes and 4 seconds, and that has been slashed now to inside of 7 minutes. So it just goes to show how much the race can get. And this is why you have to ride at the front. 1 or 2 riders have actually, this has happened because 1 or 2 riders have actually shifted their gears, and somebody's chain has probably come off, and this is why the big leaders always want to ride at the front, isn't it, Bob? Even on these small climbs, which may not decide the result overall, but it really does cause an awful lot of nervous tension.
Well, also when you have a peloton, where we started with 206 riders, that's a huge group of guys, and if you're in the middle of that and you start to lose time, there's big gaps that open up, and you have to use that much more energy to catch back up to the front. You saw Belocchi right at the front of the bike race. That's an astute move, and that's why Once can get into the jersey in the start of these big stage races all the time. They're very astute, they're well coached, they're always there right where they need to be.
And there they are, right on the front at the moment. Once commanding the field. And, well, Yoshiba's setting himself a huge target here to try and lead this race from start to finish. I'm not sure he can do that. Looks as though we've got Dave Brylan's off to the right there in the Domo colours. Now, he is a very good climber, Paul, and a rider I still fear we haven't seen the best of yet.
Well, I think he's a rider who can ride high in the overall classification. He's obviously also thinking forward to the World Championships in Zolder. There is Oscar Sevilla on the right-hand side as well, and a remarkable 7 kilos lighter than he was at the Tour de France. And that probably is something to do with the digestive problems that he was having. And another man who looks very slim here at the Vuelta a España is, in fact, David Miller, who is also claiming that he's lost weight since the end of the Tour de France. And I think we'll see David come out of the pack on one particular stage, because I have a feeling he's not maybe looking at a high overall standing, but trying to get himself as many stage wins as possible.
I don't know. I think Dave wants a top 10 finish this year, and his team is saying he can make the top 5. But you can never tell with David Miller. We have to wait and see what happens. As a rider, you can't really predict his future. And I don't think he's quite sure himself what he's going to do until he gets out there on the bike. Back up to the leaders now. It looks as though they've come together again. And Nieto at the back.
On that finishing loop, and that may well be when we'll see 1 or 2 riders disappearing from the front group. I do think right now that a lot of the big sprinters like Cipollini and Eric Zabel should be able to get themselves back up to the front end of the main field on the descent of this very difficult climb. And although it was only rated at 11%, it looks an awful lot steeper than that to me, Bob.
It looks very steep. A lot of switchbacks. I would not like to have looked at the graphic and then be presented with this. There's Danilo De Luca right in the front of the bike race there for the Team Saeco. So Simone's teammate guarding the front there, and Francesco Casagrande on the far left-hand side of the road, to the right side of our screen. And there's Savoldelli towards the back end of the field, it looks like.
Well, he is, because he's riding alongside your own Blijlevens there.
Well, you know, Paul, there was a rumour he wasn't going to start the race. He said he wasn't. He was feeling ill, and to be in this position on the first climb, he looks to be as though he could well be leaving us here very early on indeed.
Well, 107 there is Ivan Quaranta, and maybe he's decided that he's going to ride the Vuelta a España to look after the sprinter and try and get Ivan Quaranta a stage victory. But it's amazing that this man, who is one of the fastest men in the world on a flat stage, is really in severe difficulty on any slope in Europe.
Yes, you're absolutely right. He hates the climbs. Every year we see this man race, we seem to spend a lot of time behind the bunch watching his teammates trying to get him back into it. Anyway, at the front they're looking very solid here with Francesco Casagrande and the golden jersey of Bolocchi on the front. The gap the last time
to the World Championships, and of course thinking forward to next year as well, because there is Quaranta on the left-hand side there, and in fact Paolo Salvadelli leaving this team next year to sign up alongside Jan Ulrich, who has been offered a new contract by Team Telecom.
Not the same price though.
I'm sure it's on a discount lot at the moment.
Now then, Bob, it's an indication as to who the strong men are, and as far as we can see, we've not lost apart from Savoldelli. Just wondering if Mario Cipollini is surviving in this front group, because if he is, he will be a man looking for his first ever Vuelta stage win by the end of the day. One would expect to see Eric Zabel here, because Zabel on these sort of climbs is quite a good climber.
Well, and Oscar Freire as well.
Yeah.
Freire as well. Yeah. Very well-rounded sprinters. Mario maybe a bit pure speed compared to Zabel and Freire, but he should be able to stay in the front group on this climb. They're not racing flat out at the front, and the sprinter should be able to come back. We saw some groups off the back, but Cipollini seemed to be well placed at the back of the front group there. We'll see how hard this second part of this climb is. The front part was quite a bit harder than I think the riders anticipated. I think it shows you, here's our breakaway now. They're coming across the top. The King of the Mountain points will be up there. It looks like the Nieto is going to allow the Frenchman from Cofidis to take it. El Portillo, that's the name of the climb there, and they'll be down to the descent on the other side. Hopefully we'll get a time gap as well. The Vuelta a España is really a climber stage race. We have a category climb the first day out on the open roads of the race, and it just it gives all the advantage to the climber guys. You have to be able to climb well to win this particular Grand Tour as compared to the other two, which is more of a all-arounders type of course. Savoldelli and Armstrong winning the Giro and the Tour de France this year.
Well, being a first category climb, that's 16 points for Klein. So these two riders, Paul, have got themselves little presentations to await at the finish line today. It looks as though Klein might be our first leader in the King of the Mountains competition. There you can see the peloton showing a few tired legs. The season rolls to a close, I think. Huge splits in the bunch. They should regroup, but now we're away from the flatlands of the first 50 kilometres. We're now going into the undulations, which will take us to a little uphill finish. He has the form, and surprisingly, Eric Zabel didn't seem too worried by the fact that he'd lost his big lead-out man, Fagnini, almost on the 11th hour of the start of the race. He just said he's very confident his team can do all that's required to help him build on his 18 wins this season. He won 29 races last year, so he must be going off the ball, Paul.
Well, I wouldn't mind going off the ball and having a number of victories like that under my belt, but Mario Cipollini, on the other hand, does have Giovanni Lombardi. These guys seem to have been riding uphill for an awful long time here through the finishing town of Alcoy, and they're not too far away from the finishing line right now, and I think by the time they get the next time check, we'll be looking at a deficit for the main field of around about 2.5 minutes, because, Bob, just looking at these two guys, you can see now the pain of having been at the front of this bike race for almost 100 kilometres.
You can see the fatigue in the legs creeping in there, lactic acid replacing the oxygen that you start with. These guys are really struggling. They're holding on, though. They've done a great ride to stay out in front of this bike race for this long. It looks like a pretty tough finish for the sprinters, but I still think it's going to stay together at this point.
Well, it's been a hard slog up to the line. I thought we'd gone through it, but clearly we have now. As the clock starts on the left, a nice crowd here enjoying a beautiful late summer's day in eastern Spain. Now we'll get a very accurate time check as they pass through that finishing banner. Been a great breakaway by these riders. Sadly, we still can't see it working out, and I'm sure many of you watching who understand the sport will probably agree with us, because here we see the teammates now of all of the sprinters keeping the tempo on at the back. And Bartko, and this is now Aldag, the former champion of Germany. He lost his title this time around to Danilo Hondo. And Hondo, by the way, is riding extremely well in the Hessen-Rundfahrt at the moment. He's just won a stage in that event. So Telecom managing to keep a good team in action on home soil, as well as sending Zabel and the boys over here to the tour. Now, will we see the chase? Because they're breathing down their necks, and there they are. 18 kilometres to go to the finish, and they've got them in sight for the first time today since the 10th kilometre. And it's Jastel who have started the counter move.
Well, I think the sprinters have all got their fingers and their legs crossed right now, because they're hoping it's not going to be too hard on this climb, and hoping they can go over the summit of the climb still in contact with the main field. The two leaders are just surviving, but only just because there is the big shadow of the main field starting to pull themselves back. It's always difficult when you've been on a long breakaway like this to hope that you're going to survive, but for the two men at the front, it is all over after a very long breakaway of around about 115 kilometres. A complete change on the front end of the main field as Jastel launched the attacks. They've been launching these attacks for a couple of minutes right now. This is Dario Gardeo Fernandez who's gone off the front, and he's the first man who will see these riders since this very early morning start to the race.
But it was Fernandez who literally ripped the field as he started the climb at a very steep hairpin bend. He's right up to the two leaders, but so is the advanced party from the head of the peloton now. So they've been caught, in fact, at 126 kilometres today, so they've been in the lead for 116 kilometres. But unfortunately, Bob, it's not going to win them too many prizes at the finish.
Well, they hope they'll get over the top of this little climb here, and at least at the back of the peloton, the riders going very fast from behind. Two breakaway guys are dead tired right now, but if they can get a little bit of a rest, they won't lose too much time before the finish. But you can see Angel Nieto coming through the peloton like a ton of bricks now. They'll hopefully be able to stay on the back and then get down to the finish line. But yes, their chances are over for today, and it looks like it's going to go over to the sprinters. The whole group is still contained. We'll see how much further this climb is and how difficult it becomes.
Well, it's stringing them out, and I must say that the sprinters, if they do win this, will deserve it, because they've had to withstand some rather nasty moments on this stage.
There's a lot of attacks came as soon as we turned the little right-hand corner at the bottom of this climb here. Men were launching themselves out of the front. In fact, what it has done is taken a lot of the sprinters' teams away from the front end of the main field. They're at the moment clambering along, and I tell you what, the Cofidis rider there on the right-hand side, Claire, has done a very good job. He's accelerated. What he wants to do is try and stay in at the front end of the main field, and maybe if he can get himself some more King of the Mountains points. He shouldn't have any problem being the King of the Mountains today, but if he can get himself a few extra points here, he could keep that King of the Mountains jersey for a couple more days. But you can see the main field just grouping together at the front end, and all of the sprinters' men are in that long line at the rear end of that peloton. And there's David Echavarria going off on the front.
Well, he'll always be on the attack with little David, and he's now gone down to chase this rider from Fuenlabrada, or is it Seiko who's gone clear here? Two teams with very similar colours, but there's two of them going for the sprint at the top of the climb now. Could well be somebody like Fabio Sacchi here, who's come clear. And they're going to take the points out, so Paul's theory has gone into the win there, unfortunately for little Claire, because he was unable to score points. It's only third category, which means the first 6 riders over the line will get the points, and 6 for the win down to 1 for 6. And well ridden by these boys now as we head under this banner here, which is saying 9 kilometres to go, just over 5 miles. We know, we've seen the finish now, it's uphill. It would be in favour of breakaways, gaining seconds over the field. So on a day, Bob, when we thought that Bolocchi wouldn't have too much trouble holding on to his golden jersey, he's under pressure.
Well, that's an absolute panic being thrown in the peloton right now by Oscar Sevilla from the Kelmic team. Only 15 seconds behind on GC. It might be the virtual leader on the road right now. It's incredible to see on a descent Sevilla attacking and getting a gap on the whole Once team.
Now, about this 9-second gap that wasn't going to work, Bob, at the moment it's looking pretty good, because here are the two leaders. They started, remember, over the top of the last little climb. Noval was the rider who to attack, quickly joined by David Echeverria. But I bet they didn't think that this group of 4 would get off the front on the chase down the mountain and look as though they could well join them, with one of the race favourites in here, Oscar Sevilla, who rode so well last year as well in this event. Had a very disappointing tour, I think, because he'd sort of deflected his training because of all the problems he was having with, did he have a team to race for? Was he ever going to see a salary check coming in because they weren't paying him? And by the time he got to the tour, I think mentally he wasn't ready for that race. But there's no doubt he is ready for this race. And as Paul has said, he shed a lot of weight, and this could be a very, very good psychological move today.
Well, it wasn't an ideal preparation for him for the Tour de France, because the debate was right up until about 15 days to go whether or not his team would continue to finish the season, and there were negotiations going on, and one of the big teams looking to try and sign him up was Team Telecom. These are the 2 leaders right now. They're just holding on to a slight advantage over the chasing group of 4. Oscar Sevilla will not get any help at all there from the man in second place, Jose Acevedo. He's the Once rider who obviously has been sent up there as the policeman to try and slow down the success of this breakaway. But I can see a situation right now, Bob, where the whole of this race comes together in the last 3 or 4 kilometres. 7 seconds to Sevilla and 13 seconds to the main field.
This is an incredibly long descent all the way to the finish in Alcoy, and it's strategically a point where a small group could get a bit of an advantage. But I think as we get down to the highways towards town, Phil, as we get closer to the finish line,
conceded defeat, but he hasn't.
No, I think they will see a big regroupment. If anybody else had broken away besides Oscar Sevilla, I think they would have stand a bit of a better chance. But now that Once is chasing at the front of the peloton, flat out, we're going to see a very exciting finale here.
I think you're absolutely right. We're certainly not going to see too much indication as to who's going to win the Tour of Spain 3 weeks away in Madrid. But this is a very, very cheeky move by Oscar Sevilla in a chase group of 4. As we now pass under another one of the banners here, and it says 6 kilometres to go for the 2 leaders. Well, we'll have to fit in one more very short commercial break and then rejoin us at Once's Hotel. Could be switching camps.
Well, that's a very cheeky move by Oscar Sevilla, which is why you have to be alert on every stage of a Vuelta a España or a Tour de France or a Giro d'Italia. And that is the clever move. It's the kind of move we've seen a man like Gilberto Simoni making in the Giro d'Italia. And you can see at the front end of the main field, it is absolute pressure now as small groups are forcing themselves off the front of the main field because of the pressure of the chase after Oscar Sevilla, who will not have any friends at all in this group, Phil. Nobody is helping him to try and consolidate his advantage because they now realise that he has got a chance of taking the new jersey. And the front, though, it's the guard of Mario Cipollini coming forward right now. They're going to go through all kinds of hell to try and pull back this breakaway. As we go under 3 kilometres to go to the finish line, we get a chance to see whether or not Mario Cipollini and Eric Zabel's men can pull this race back together in the final few kilometres.
This is a doer struggle now by these riders, and I think they may have made the move of the race out there coming across to this group, and a brave move it was certainly at the time. But just look now, Cipollini must be feeling good to send his teammates to the front. They are at 3 kilometres to go, Bob. It's not many seconds have ticked by since the 6 leaders went through that bridge.
Well, that's Mario Schietta, who's a fair climber himself, but Oscar Sevilla is putting in a very impressive ride. He must have great form right now. If he can hold this peloton off to the finish, that would be a real surprise, and Once will have to take a huge notice of that. Also, Roberto Heras of the Postal team, Sevilla is flying.
Well, Chile is also flying pretty well here now as Benesto are launching an attack, and there's plenty of men looking to shadow him too. Looks like Oscar Botero has hooked up as well, so he's playing policeman here in defence of Sevilla. The Once are putting the riders into the mix as well, and all of a sudden gone are the teammates of Mario Cipollini. This is not a race for the sprinters anymore now, it's a race to save time.
Well, serious panic at the front end of the main field. Santiago Botero not firing on all cylinders yesterday in the team time trial, but today doing the job of the lieutenant of Oscar Sevilla, who is just off the front there. The main field can almost reach out and touch, but on a run into the finish like this, it is so very difficult to close down the last 40 or 50 metres. There is Yoshiba Bolocchi very close to the front. Another move coming across the front here from ibenesto.com. Everybody wants to move right now. There is still a slight breath of air between the leading group of 6, but the main field is just there on the horizon.
Hopefully back into attention for Oscar Freire, who is isn't too far off the front of that bunch either. At 1 kilometre, this is going to be a sensational finish.
It's all going to come back together. It has all come back together. Mappe have done the job. The team of Oscar Freire, the world champion, have clawed back to Oscar Sevilla. It's a one compact group now. The main field inside 1,000 yards to the finishing line, looking over their shoulders. The sprinters now want to know where their men are. They're trying to make sure they can organise this sprint. It's a difficult sprint to sort out, but on the front, I also saw right in there Giovanni Lombardi, which can only mean one thing. Super Mario Cipollini has managed to get himself up there. Cipollini is up into 4th place. Looking back, you can see Eric Zabel not too far behind him. In fact, they've opened a gap right now. This is going to be a big battle.
Well, it's going to be a big battle, but there'll only be one winner here now, because Mario Cipollini, I think, has got himself onto the wheel here of Eric Zabel, and that's shut it all down now. No, it was a Domo rider, in fact, who started the sprint now. This has gone for Seiko now, leading them out here. So Cipollini has got to get himself out of a little bit of a mess now, because they've got some very good sprinters at Seiko, but not the best men, as it is. Pataki is in 3rd place, and here's the man that Eric Zabel has feared an awful lot as he breaks now. And so, as it looks as though it could be a first win here for Fassa Bortolo, as Pataki is making a run for the line, but he's gone too soon. This is going to be a desperate finish, as it looks to me like a Milanese rider who is going to the line. This could be Angel Edo is going to hit the line. No, he's lost it on the line, and it's gone across to a rider from Seiko. Now, I would suspect, Paul, that is possibly Sacchi, but we'll wait and get confirmation. We think it's Fabio Sacchi who's crossed the line, and that has really thrown a cat among the pigeons, because the top sprinters totally made a mess of that.
Well, it was so difficult just catching up with inside of 1 kilometre to go. They were all over the road, and they were trying to control all of the attacks. Cipollini, in fact, has just come across the line. He was at the back end of the main field there, but what an unbelievable run in towards the finish line. It was almost the day for Oscar Sevilla, but coming up there, you can see it was all down to the last surge for the line there. I'm pretty sure it was Fabio Sacchi who came through there. A superbly timed sprint for him. Giovanni Lombardi was pretty close to the front end as well. Angel Edo was well up there, and one of the Phonak riders too, getting himself pretty close to the front end of the main field.
Now, Sacchi, we think, and I'm pretty sure looking at him here, it is Fabio Sacchi. That'll be his 4th win of the year. He's certainly got good sprinting form at the moment, and pipping Eric Zabel on the line. And the Phonak rider who is crossing the line there, well, almost certainly that'll be Sven Tuttenberg. And that for Sven on that sort of finish is a terrific performance for him.
And look there in the top 10 there, you can see the Mayo Amarillo, the golden tunic there, because Yoshiba Bolocchi was very close to the front as well, being very attentive at the front end of the main field. But you can see the chaos of this sprint. Riders all over the place. It certainly wasn't an organised sprint this afternoon. The teams of the sprinters getting very caught out there. Eric Zabel was without any men around him for today's stage, but he obviously proved this was an Eric Zabel sprint. And I think as we come up to the final search for the line, we'll find that Eric Zabel managed to get himself across the line there, Phil, in 2nd place, but it will certainly go down to the photo between 2nd and 3rd.
No, I don't know. No, it's a clear 2nd for Zabel. But a win for the Italian Fabio Sacchi. First blood for the sprinters. We weren't expecting him to do that. Watch the sprint again. It was, in fact, Danilo De Luca of Seiko who got the sprint. Eric Zabel taking 2nd place. And in 3rd place, the former world champion, Oscar Camazin. Here we are now. We've got Danilo on the podium. This, by the way, is 7th win of the year. And he's had a great August, finishing placed in the Hughes Classic and the San Sebastian Classic. He won, by the way, the Grand Prix Fred Mengoni, and Fred is a great friend of American cyclists and lives in the United States. But this is the man now. If we'd have seen this picture earlier, we'd have been able to have spotted him, but unfortunately this is our slow motion camera that always comes in after the result is known. But there's no doubt who it is now, Paul.
Absolutely no doubt at all. Danilo De Luca. Now he also is a good tip for a world title at the end of the Vuelta a España. He timed that to absolute perfection. It was a tough sprint finish, and he caught out a man by the name of Eric Zabel, who managed to get across the line in 2nd place. Oscar Camazin was the man who came up there in 3rd place, a former world champion for Switzerland, and the man who really I regard as the team captain on the road for Team Phonak. Angel Edo was up there for the Mayam MSS Milanazzi team, and Paolo Bassoni from Tacconi Sport got up there in 5th place. But I think what was more important was the 7th place finish of Leaf today, because at one moment with about 5 kilometres to go, he was no longer the leader of this bike. bike race, and he used his team to absolute perfection and pull himself back into the bike race with a bit of help, I would say, from ibonesto.com. And he's having a bit of trouble there, Phil, putting the golden tunic over his shoulders. But Yoshiba Belocchi, still the leader of the Vuelta.
Goodbye to the Clasificación General. Let's have a look inland to Mes, bridge of the Tour of Spain. We're now on stage number 4, and by the time the riders return to the ocean today, they're going to find it rather hot, and forecast temperature of 97 degrees Fahrenheit for the 203 survivors of this year's Tour. I'm Phil Liggett, joined of course by Bob Roll and Paul Sherwin. Bob, yesterday was a great day for the sprinters and a great day for one man in particular.
Mario Cipollini, a man we've seen time and time again bolt out of the pack after a perfect lead out from his team.
Yeah.
Aqua Saponi won a stage, his first ever in the Vuelta a España, and I think that will please him a lot. Now he's won stages in all 3 Grand Tours. It took a long time for him to get this one. After 4 tries, he's finally got a stage in the Vuelta a España. Most teams in cycling today aspire to 2-pronged attack, GC and stage wins, but Aqua Saponi, Cipollini's team, they are dedicated to one purpose only, and that's getting Mario Cipollini as close to the line as possible. His teammate Giovanni Lombardi hand-delivered him to the line. No one could come around. I think we might see some more of that today as it's a flat stage, but Cipollini back on top of the podium where he loves to be.
Well, there's no doubt he's done something he's never done before. That's win a stage of the Tour of Spain, so he really has a very complete victory list in the big tours now. But today, you know, it's the calm before the storm, because there are 2 big mountain stages looming on the horizon. But today, Paul, might be another Cipollini win.
Well, it could be. You know, in fact, he was saying at the start this morning that he's got the same legs that he had at the Giro d'Italia just 3 months ago, and he's looking for another stage win before we get to the big mountains. It's a fairly flat course again, Dan. I think the most difficult part of today's course for the riders is going to be the heat over this part of the southern tip of Spain. It's 149 kilometres from Aguillas down to Roques del Mar, and it's totally pan-flat.
Well, I have to say that it is a glorious day, and everybody's on the beach at the moment down at the finish line, but they'll be up on the line very shortly to see the arrival. Let's remind ourselves as to the overall situation. It's very tight at the top, as you can well imagine, and all of the leading riders are from the same team, courtesy of that team time trial a couple of days ago that opened the Tour. Belocchi is facing up to his 4th day in the golden jersey. His teammates line up behind him. Best of the rest is now, though, Jose Gutierrez from the Kelme Costa Blanca. He's a sprinter, followed by Zabel. Big danger man Heras is 9th, 14 seconds back, the leader of US Postal. And further down, he's got his teammates behind him as well in Jose Rubiera. And Santiago Botero had a flat tie yesterday. He's 13th, completing the top 15. Juan de Los Angeles. Let's go to the action. And this is the man who is creating the action today. It is Dario Gadeo, and he rides for Jazztel. Not surprisingly, because he's racing through the region of his sponsorship today. So I guess, Paul, it was a pretty predictable move, and it came almost at the drop of the flag.
Well, he came straight out of the starting gate, and in fact, at one stage, he built himself up an advantage of 11 minutes and 14 seconds. But since then, in fact, there's been a fair reaction at the front end of the main field, and it's really come from the Aqua Saponi team of Mario Cipollini. And yes, he does go into the area where the team is sponsored by, the Costa del Almeria, and in fact there's a hotspot sprint there, Meta Volantes as they call it in the Tour of Spain, at 126 kilometres. So he's going to hope to survive until then, but I have a feeling, Bob, that the way the main field is going right now, they should pull him back before the end.
Yes, he's got a pretty good gap now, around about 9 minutes, but he let it go up to about 12 minutes, 11:55 I think at one point, and at that time, both Once and Mario Cipollini's Aqua Saponi team sent riders to the front of the peloton, started chasing. I think one of the tactics he might think about using next time, at least his teammates anyways, he'll be pretty tired after all day out in the front today, is to keep the gap under 10 minutes. That seems to be the magic number before an all-out chase from the field starts to ensue. If you can keep it around 9:55 and let it wait long enough before the chase begins in the peloton, you have a better chance, actually, than getting a lead over 10 minutes. So we'll see what happens. He's putting in a good effort here, though, but they're chasing in earnest now in the peloton, so it might not be very long before he's caught.
Yes, and poor Orvino's going to have to look for something special. It won't be a chance to improve on the time gaps now, because this, on stage number 6, is very definitely a race for the sprinters. It takes us through to nearly 900 kilometres covered in this opening 6 days of racing.
Very flat course, 177 kilometres on the road to Leon, and certainly, as always in the Tour of Spain, Phil, the kind of stage where the race will be dominated by a breakaway, but I'm pretty sure that it'll all come back together at the end.
By the way, Thor Hushovd has kept his lead, though, in the points competition, while De Luca has also claimed the lead in the King of the Mountains after that great ride yesterday. Milram lead out. They seem to have got it right at last here. Pataki not at the front. He's just in front of Zabel at the moment. No sign of the golden jersey. He's not a sprinter, De Luca. He's also not in danger of losing that jersey today either. Here comes the charge with David Miller now, and guess who's on his wheel there? That's Ventoso, being brought up for another crack at a stage win.
Well, Miller's doing a lot of work for the team here, certainly playing the team player. He'll have a crack himself in one of the individual time trials in the latter part of the Vuelta a España. There you can see Quickstep over on the right-hand side in the darker blue jersey with the white bands over it. They are trying to get their man Paolo Bettini up one more time, but it's David Miller all over the front end of the main field, and good job that policeman. I tell you what, that's not a job I would like.
No, Miller's riding simply superbly here. He's gifted with his terrific turn of speed. Remember, he was the winner of the World Time Trial Championship, but later on confessed to using drugs. It cost him 2 years of his career. Now he's under 1 kilometre to go, trying to get Ventoso out for the lead out. But they've got to watch out. Team Milram are firing here now, as they've got their man in the right position, Eric Zabel, or will it be Alessandro Pataki? Look at the gaps in that peloton. It's really been caused by the high-speed riding of David Miller.
Well, Miller's still on the front there in the yellow jersey. All he's thinking about now is keeping this line stretched
but where's
out.
Ventoso?
So no
his team man's got. He's just realised it.
Yep.
He thought Ventoso was still on his wheel and he'd lost it. Miller's now freewheeling. He's out of it on the far side of the road. Milram now are looking for the move here, and it is Pataki and Zabel lining up. Zabel's right in the wheel there now. Pataki goes. Pataki launching Zabel. Watch out for the charge here by the Lampre team, because Danilo Napolitano, he's a little bit of a rock and roll sprinter, but he's trying to break in, and the telecom rider, in fact, is Andre Gripel, who's trying to come through on the right here, and Hushovd has got into the mix as well. He's on the far right in the leader's jersey of points, and is this the win for Hushovd? On the far left was Zabel, on the right I think it's Hushovd. He's got it at last.
And you know who was right up there as well was Alessandro Pataki. He was about 3rd or 4th. He was over on the left-hand side there. That is the best performance he's had on his comeback trail.
It was, because that was a very rapid approach to the line. Miller went too quick for Ventoso, blew him clean away. Well, he's had 3 second places. I think he's actually celebrating a victory here. We'll get another look at that, I'm sure.
Strange jersey there as well, the white jersey with blue spots, and that is the points jersey here at the Vuelta a España. Look at the acceleration, turbos kicking in there. Zabel trying to come around the outside, and over on the right-hand side there is Alessandro Pataki. Good to see him back at the front in the sprints.
Well, it was a very, very close finish here, but no doubt in my mind the rider on the far right has got the better. A really good result there for Andre Gripel of T-Mobile. Most unusual man for us for the sprints, and Pataki, you're right, far left is in the mix. Good win for him. Well, maximum points in the points competition. The golden jersey may be gone for keeps, but this is the one he's aiming for now to hold all the way to Madrid, and that's the victory today for the Norwegian.
Well, it's that lunge for the line that gives it the victory by about half a wheel, but that's good enough for Thor Hushovd, and he'll be very happy with that.
There's confirmed Gripel, Zabel, Pataki, the 2 Milram boys, having a good result today. Napolitano sprinting very well for Lampre. He's their sprinter in 5th place. Doesn't look like we're going to show you any more of the result today, but I can tell you Luca Paolini was 7th, and Stuart O'Grady got 8th. And Smiles now, he's not on the stage for a golden jersey, but he's on the stage as stage winner, and that's a great feeling. And Danilo De Luca keeps his lead here by those scant 4 seconds over Brakovic. They didn't bother to race today, they just came home in the peloton, as did all of the men who triumphed at the mountain yesterday. And somewhere down these top 10, I think we could be looking at the future winner of this year's race.
Well, there he is, Danilo De Luca, looking very comfortable. Easy day in the saddle for him. Basically, he just had to keep a very close eye on everybody else, and it's probably going to change again tomorrow, because he'll have to come up another little bit of a hilly climb on tomorrow's stage.
That's about right, Paul. Stage 7, in fact, is up to the Alto here at the finishing line. It's a mountain we don't know a lot about, only been climbed once before, but it could give us a new race leader here.
Well, it could. The last time this route, the exact same route, was actually ridden was 1997, and the winner on that occasion was Roberto Heras at the top of this very difficult climb to Morrodero. And I tell you what, I think there's going to be a serious sort-out. Fairly undulating to begin with, and a fairly short course as well, 154 kilometres, just inside of 100 miles, so I would think we'll see a very aggressive race.
Always a woody short stages because they tend to be fast and furious even when there is a mountain top finish. There's the stats of the final climb up to El Morrodero. It's nearly 17 kilometres to the summit. It's 18 kilometres if we start it right down from the bottom there. It takes us up to over 1,800 metres.
But look at the start of the climb. 12% in the first kilometre, 15% in the second kilometre, and then a mere average of 10% for the rest. Ouch.
Well, we're looking at David Loosely here, and I think he's the lone survivor now. It was a three-man breakaway. It did get quite a lead. It went very early on, and Loosely, riding for Lamprey these days, is the only man left at the front, and the peloton are closing in. We're on the lower foothills of the finishing climb.
Yep, he's been leading the race. They had a maximum advantage at one stage of over 11 and a half minutes. A little bit of freedom given to the riders, but I think everybody realising that big, massive advantages could get wiped out on this final climb of the day. He's still riding fairly well loosely, but in the main field behind, they're starting to really pick it up a little bit. At 3 minutes and 30 seconds is a group containing Alexander Vinokourov, and 26 seconds behind that is the group